So, of course, our guest today needs no introduction, but he'll get one anyway. Neil deGrasse Tyson with a new book. Here we go. Accessory to War, the Unspoken Alliance Between Astrophysics and the Military. Actually, Neil, I've written you a new subtitle. It's called Space Policy for People Not in a Hurry. I've read all your books, and I'm one of the few interviewers you will dialogue with who actually read the book. It's long, it's detailed, it's dense, it's scholarly.
I lost you there for a sec.
Oh, okay. I'm here.
Yes, did that last sentence again?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you want the nice words again?
Yeah. You're one of the few interviewers who
actually read the book.
Oh.
Yes. Well, I know this literature somewhat. When I was in a doctoral program in history of science, we had to study some science policy, sort of post-World War II, which is when government funding of big science really took off. And
Vannevar Bush and
that's
the Endless Frontier, this important time in the history of American science as it affects policy and governance and the chasing of that moving frontier. Yeah,
totally. And I have to say, your book, in credit to Avis Lang, your longtime editor at the magazine, there is you guys have made an important contribution, I think, to the scholarly literature on science studies and particularly space studies. But before we dive into that, just catch us up on what's the status of Cosmos filming now, the second series, right?
Oh, yeah, you want some insider information?
Yeah, give us the scoop. Did you go back to Big Sur and stand on the cliffside again?
Indeed, I did. I was on Big Sur, and that's an important sort of branch point, link point to previous episodes, and it's no less beautiful than it ever was on the cliffs as the waters wash in and crash onto the rocks.
Yeah.
And we had an interesting moment there where in the previous occasion where we had these big long distance shots, they were done by helicopter. And now, of course, all of that's done by drone. All right. So we have these camera drones that to get someone who's half our age joysticking them around. And the funny thing is the drone is about this big, right? And it makes this buzzing noise from the sound of the rotor wings, and there were seagulls trying to attack it.
Right, they're not much bigger than seagulls.
Right, exactly, and it's this thing flying in near their nest, and so we had a person from the Park Service, the California Parks, sort of guide us into so that we don't disturb the wildlife that's in the area, and so we kept it away from the nests and so no animals were harmed in the filming of Cosmos at Big Sur.
So what are some of the themes you're covering in stories and characters this series?
Yeah, so let me give you just some dates. So it's scheduled now for this. We don't have an exact premiere date yet, but it's definitely spring 2019. This was discussed with the production, and the subtitle of this one is Cosmos Possible Worlds. And for me, though it sounds cliche, I think it's really true. For me, this, I think, is the best of the three. Excuse me, let me be more precise. It's the most introspective of the three, ones that will reach more deeply into you as a citizen of the world and a citizen of the universe. And it will compel you to fold our understandings of science and the discoveries of science into your thinking about what is your place in the universe, and what is, more importantly, what is your responsibility given your place in the universe, to what is your responsibility to yourself, to your species, to the other species of life on Earth, not just animal but plant species, and what is your obligation to generations yet to be born. And Cosmos Possible Worlds explores the possible worlds Earth could be, given our power over the fate of the Earth, but it also uses it uses our understanding of planetary systems in general. The fact that we now have nearly 4,000 cataloged planets orbiting other stars as a launch point to just think about all the ways of being alive that could be in the universe.
So possible worlds is not just planets out there, but worlds in ourselves
and
our own world.
But sure,
what we can make it. Well, Heavens on Earth is why I called my book that, because it's really it's inside of us to make what we want of the world as either heaven or hell. Well, while we're on that topic,
as in the other two, so the original Cosmos 1980 was co-written by my friend and colleague Steve Soter, Ann Druyan, and Carl Sagan. And Ann Druyan would become Carl Sagan's wife and collaborator over the years, and they wrote several books together. The 2014 Cosmos, which I had the honor and privilege of hosting and serving as executive science editor, was by then Carl, of course, had died. He'd been dead for 8 years by then. And get my math right. Been dead for 18 years.
97, yeah.
So that was co-written by Ann Druyan and Steve Soter. And this third one is co-written by Brannon Braga and Ann Druyan. So the common thread of all three of these is Ann Druyan. If you part the curtains, all the places where the script and the imagery is sort of tugging on your sense of emotion, she is totally there. And of course there are science committees that we invoke to make sure, because I have some expertise with the astrophysics, as has been the legacy of Cosmos. It touches all the sciences, and even places where I don't have particular expertise. So we bring in others to assess that.
You don't know everything? Well, I have to say, Ann's a real artful writer, beautiful, powerful writer who blends science and literature nicely, I think, as Carl did.
And history as well, yes.
And history, yeah. Having history there is super important in terms of putting things into perspective.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the new book, colonizing Mars not going to happen anytime soon, and yet, if you listen to Elon, or at least his tweets, it sounds like we're going pretty soon. So, just for fun, I wrote a long essay for Scientific American. I'm not sure they're going to publish it yet, but on colonizing Mars, what kind of government should we have? What kind of governing system, economic system, money, Bitcoin, whatever, and he tweeted back when I put this out just for fun, direct democracy, very few laws. We should all just get along, and freedom for everybody, which, sounds great if you have 10 people. But if you have 100 people, 1,000 people, 100,000 people, all of a sudden things start looking, things start looking like they do here on Earth. So really, in terms of other world possibilities, we're still taking human nature with us wherever we go.
Yeah, and that's a point that is often not fully reflected upon in these future scenarios that people paint. A point we make in this book, and I've made many times when the opportunity arises, is if you look back in the Peaceful Use of Outer Space Treaty of 1967, that might not be the exact title, but that's the sense of it. You read it, and it was at a time when we and the Soviet Union were putting things in space, and we were arch enemies. And so it thought the United Nations thought it was time to sort of set some ground rules among the spacefaring nations who would become signatories to that treaty. And that treaty, if you read it, it's beautiful. It's very kumbaya, all right? And we'll go into space, and if one of your astronauts is in trouble, we will help them. And it's beautiful. And I just kept thinking to myself, in my cynical old age, what confidence do we have in ourselves as a species that just by taking us into space, that all of a sudden we'll be nice to one another? But somehow it's okay to not be nice to each other here on Earth's surface?
Right.
I just didn't distinguish between space and Earth's surface. And if you want me to believe that we can be peaceful with one another in space, first demonstrate that here on Earth. Then I'll say, all right, now I get it. We can do that in space. But my cynicism tells me that if we cannot be peaceful on Earth with one another, space is not some special domain that'll somehow enable it or empower it, unless many wars, of course not all, but many wars were fought based on access to resources, to finite or limited resources. Space is a place where you have essentially unlimited resources in asteroids and in energy and in all the rest of this. So if space becomes part of our backyard, then space could be the very source of undoing of the sources of so many wars that we have fought in the past.
Maybe. Actually, that was one point I was going to push back on, but I'm going to do it now. By the way,
let me feel you push.
the exact title is from your own book, "The Treaty on the Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of Outer Space, Including the Moon and Other Celestial Bodies." Now, that's a government bureaucratic title.
Yeah, that's why I keep shortening it, knowing that somehow that's not right. Yeah.
Well, let me just say parenthetically, too, the book is beautiful. The cover was just beautifully designed, and I could tell the moment I got it in the package, it was a quality production because it's heavy. It's a heavy book. Well, so on that one point, actually, I'm going to read just a short thing from Pinker's book, The Better Angels of Our Nature here. That's a common theme people have who think about war. Why do nations have conflicts? Because of scarcity of resources. In fact,
no, all I said was, wait, just to be clear, all I said was, if there were ever wars fought on the basis of scarce resources, and space has unlimited resources, that's a category of war that would no longer be fought.
Okay, but I'm still going to push back. Here's why. This is what's called the curse of resources. The vulnerability to civil war of countries in which control of the government is a winner-take-all jackpot is multiplied when the government controls windfalls like oil, gold, diamonds, and strategic minerals. Far from being a blessing, these bonanzas create the so-called resource curse, also known as the paradox of plenty and fool's gold. Countries with an abundance of non-renewable, easily monopolized resources have slower economic growth, crappier governments, and more violence. As Venezuelan politician Juan Perez Alfonso put it, oil is the devil's excrement. So you have to have good governance, or else even plenty of resources aren't going to help you. It could make it even worse.
Well, no, but still... plenty of resources. You can have plenty of resources, but if they're not widely available to all players, then that you have a source of conflict. So now you're talking about the monopolization of resources.
Right.
And I'm saying you go to your asteroid and you extract gold, platinum, whatever. I go to my asteroid and I'll extract it. And so I don't need yours. It's like salt today. Salt used to be a strategic commodity, and because it enabled the preservation of food over the winter months until your next crop came. And that was the only known way you could preserve your proteins. And now we can refrigerate, there's canning, there's freezing, there's any number of ways you can accomplish this. And so no longer are we fighting wars over salt, but we are fighting wars over oil. And we are fighting wars over, not quite yet, I don't think, over water, but that might be on the horizon. The universe's unlimited supply of water. You park a comet outside the moon, no limit of water.
Of course, what we're talking about here are really expensive projects. So I could easily see how a Google or a SpaceX or government of the United States gets a monopoly on the resources. And we know what happens when monopolies, can create a form of tyranny. So, for example, on Mars, somebody has to produce oxygen and water and so on. And so it's not like the European colonists come to North America and they have free water and free air and free food on the hoof and wings and fins. You have to produce that. And the moment somebody has a monopoly on that, that's a recipe for tyranny. So how do you deal with that tyranny of human nature wanting to control other people and resources?
Okay, so I historically, what would happen is, okay, you are charging more than I want to pay for it. So I will then find my own asteroid. I will then find my own part of Mars. Yes, it's expensive, but if what you're charging is less than it would cost me to extract it, I'm paying you for it. Mm-hmm. And I will continue to, and I'll have no hesitation doing so. But it's self-limiting. There's a point where you are charging so much, I become inventive. And I say, I just found a cheap way to extract water from the soils of Mars and make rocket fuel by separating that. And now I do it, and now your price drops. So it's Elon Musk's point about sort of free enterprise and this sort of thing. Yeah. If you charge too much, I'm not buying from you. Yep. Period. And here's a simpler example than the one you gave that I think is more, that highlights it more. If we find right now, it's still $10,000 a pound to put anything in orbit around the Earth. Okay, about that, plus or minus. If you find so NASA, if I put you up in space and you want to drink water, 10,000 pounds for that pint. Okay, sorry, $10,000 for that pound of water. Okay, Now I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a space entrepreneur. I find a comet or I find a water-rich asteroid, and I corral it, I lasso it, and I extract water. I now sell that water to NASA's astronauts for $9,000 a pint. Okay. You're going to buy your water from me because you're going to save $1,000 a pint. Okay. Someone says, oh my gosh, I have a cleverer way to do this. I've got a cheaper asteroid that's lighter and I can maneuver it better. And now I can produce it and I undercut you. I'm going to sell NASA water for $8,000 a pint. This is the free market enterprise. We're thinking of space as this prohibitive thing because it hasn't been done yet. Everything done the first time is prohibitively expensive. And so that's not a new fact about the history of economics. So
maybe it'll be something like Tesla, where the initial cars were super expensive. The second generation were also, $100,000 range. Third generation, the Model 3 is $35,000, $40,000. Now everyone's going to have an electric car. BMW and Mercedes just announced this week they each have Tesla level cars coming out that'll be under $50,000 each. Pretty soon everyone will have them. Is that really possible to do in space?
Well, not now. Of course not.
Right.
Of course not. It's not possible now. So, and by the way, I'm not one of these space people who say the future is in space. No, like you said earlier, when Columbus came to the New World and stepped off his ship, he could breathe the air. He could eat the fruit on the vines. The wood in the New World, the trees in the New World were made of wood, just like the trees in Europe. So he can repair his boat. Okay, so that whatever were the travails of the era of the great explorers, the fact is where they landed, the only hostility would be the natives already there who telling them to get the hell out of there, or health or whatever other reasons, not the air, not the temperature, not anything else. You step off the ship on Mars, you need oxygen, you need water, you need a food supply, and I loosely call the surface of Mars the soils of Mars, but it's not soil. There's no microbes. That's why you need, like in the movie The Martian, the first crop, they're going to be poop crops, like poop potatoes, like in The Martian. You're going to need some kind of organic fertilizer to grow food, because Mars does receive sunlight, and in principle, you can create some kind of photosynthesis where you get an energy source that is no different from how we get energy to our plants on Earth, the sun. So it will take way in the future to enable that and make that a viable economic operation. For me, in the foreseeable future, I see it as something that enables science and tourism, but not colonization. I just don't see colonization as a realistic near-term future prospect.
The treaty you mentioned prohibits nations from planting flags and declaring the land their own. No one's allowed to do that.
Yeah,
right?
You can plant a flag, but just not declare it your own.
Right. The flag is yours, but the dirt it's in is not yours. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see how that's going to last if space really becomes everybody's backyard. I just don't. But it's admirable, and I respect the goal that it has set for itself. One point that you missed that I want to add is that I don't think Elon is going to be the first to Mars, no matter what his tweets say. That's just not the history of this exercise. And the history of this exercise, if there's a really, really expensive thing that's dangerous with unknown return on investment, uncertain return on investment, then the first players in that tend to be governments, because they have the longer view than corporations do. The government doesn't have to have the quarterly report or the annual report. They can look at their long-term hegemony, if that's what's driving them. And in so doing, they could do exactly what Queen Isabella did and said, Christopher Columbus, go across, find the short route to the far. Oh, by the way, if you find new land, here's some flags.
Stick it in there.
Wherever you land. It's not, oh, Chris, when you come back, give me a slideshow on the plants and animals that you found. No, it's declare the land in the name of Spain. And of course, most of the population of the Western Hemisphere speaks Spanish for exactly that reason.
Right.
And not Italian, because there's Columbus trying to get support from Italy, not forthcoming. So that's why
in your book nicely traces that history, like the discovery of longitude, or calculating longitude on a heaving ship, required some science and technology driven by the profit motive of a prize money.
Yes. and this goes on and on and on and on and on. So once the
telescope,
government,
you tell the story of the telescope from just looking at ships out at sea to see which freighters are coming in and what their cargo is before the other merchants do, to turning it up to the sky. That's a commercial use that gets then put to use for science.
Yeah, the telescope was not invented for that reason. And from the military point of view, we have a telescope invented by an optical maker, perfected by Galileo, who then invites the Doge of Venice up to the clock tower in Venice to look out into the lagoon and tells him you can detect whether a ship is under friend or foe by its flag 10 times farther away than with the naked eye. Bada bing, there's a sail to the military, and now he's made in shade, and he goes and observes the sun, moon, and stars. And so this is the two-way street that we spend a lot of time in the book exploring, how the motives of the military are dominance, hegemony, security. The motives of the astronomer to let me learn about the universe. And on this two-way street, the military looks over the barrier and we look over their barrier, and occasionally we swap. And this is true in spite of my field being overwhelmingly liberal anti-war. Mm-hmm. It's a curious and I think remarkable fact. A lot of that liberal anti-war is a fundamental part of just being in academia, because we're all academics in our soul, at least, if not literally. And so, because we have many of us working for NASA and for satellite manufacturing in corporate America, this sort of thing. But this fact, it means we are complicit. We can be an accessory to war, even though that's not our intent or our goal.
All the years I've known you, I know you're an atheist, but I don't really know what your politics are. I assume you're left of center, but I don't know how far, and maybe that's not even right, or what do you call yourself?
So that's an interesting fact. That meant I've successfully kept it out of my interactions with the public. Because what typically happens is people with the level of following that I now have, or even at much lower levels, those tend to be sort of pundits. And we know who they all are, and they're loud and vocal on social media. And the pundits tend to have strong views, strong opinions about how the world should be. And their communication is dripping with statements to get you to agree with their opinions. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who. It could be Rush Limbaugh. It could be Al Gore. You kind of know in advance what kind of tweet is going to come out of Al Gore's stream. It's going to be, cut your carbon footprint. Here's a way to do it. And there's a lot of this, and the conservative right commentators, those pundits, they're going to say something angry about Barack Obama and get you to not like him and to prefer Republican policy. And for me, as an educator, fundamentally as an educator, it's not my job to tell you who to vote for. It's my job to get you to think straight, to understand what an objective truth is and what is not. Something you've written about till the cows come home. And, I haven't heard that expression used in a while. Till the cows come home.
By the way, is bada bing, is that Italian in Galileo's time? No, I see where you're going with that for sure.
But it's certainly Brooklyn. It's certainly
Brooklyn. And you've been smart to stay out of the political arena, I think.
Well, if I'm asked, I don't withhold it. It's just not my goal to get you to agree with my opinions.
I understand. So what is it?
Yeah, so I lean very left, although fiscally I'm more centrist. And I don't lean so far left that I'm not out of sight of the more subtle arguments that might be made in a conservative, in an educated conservative chat room.
Right.
Okay. And let me give you an example of that. Take Cosmos, for example. In 1980, it aired on PBS. In 2014, the one I first hosted, it aired on Fox. Now, what I have found is that the farther left you are, the more likely you are to paint the right with a broader and broader brushstroke, with less and less subtlety or nuance. So there was a faction in the liberal left who said, oh, that's going to ruin Cosmos. They're going to deny climate change. And they're going to. Now, of course, they're basing all of this on Fox News.
Right.
And that's their understanding of Fox. But Fox, of course, is way bigger than this. Fox Business, Fox Sports, Fox Network, which
there's Fox Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's Fox Network airs Family Guy and The Simpsons, for goodness sake. You can't get more acerbically liberal commentated than that.
Right.
20th Century Fox put out Avatar. No one ever accused that of being some conservative agenda movie.
Right.
Okay. Fox Searchlight Pictures, their indie arm, put out Slumdog Millionaire and Little Miss Sunshine. Fox in the 90s, I think it was, if not the late 80s, had the TV show In Living Color.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, that's one of the strongest social commentary comedies that has ever aired. And so you cannot paint it with one brushstroke. And so I've made sure that however far left I am, I'm not out of sight of having an intelligent conversation with someone on the right, rather than saying, "Oh, you voted for this, I will not talk to you." You see what goes on the internet. Yep. It's just fighting. It's not conversation. So I say I'm very left of center politically. I am
socially
more socially. That's socially more towards the center fiscally, and I'd say that comes closest to it.
Yeah.
And by the way, earlier, just since you brought it up, you may have heard me disavow the label atheist, or I've been in some.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And I do that because of the word, how it's used today, how it's.
Yeah, I know.
So with dictionary definition, communication has never been about the dictionary.
Right.
Communication is about how are words used,
right.
What do people think they mean, and since this is not France, where there's a committee, a word committee that defines how you use words. Words are free to float by whatever social, cultural, political forces mandate it. And so, and my example here is, I had a friend who went up in the space shuttle to fix the Hubble telescope, and in my Facebook page I said, "Godspeed, space shuttle, STS, whatever," and someone wrote in, "I thought you were an atheist. How could you use that term? Godspeed."
They didn't know the John Glenn reference.
And it's like, okay, if I'm an atheist and you're denying my use of that word, I guess I'm not an atheist then.
Right.
So I have conduct that people in modern times will refuse to participate in or deny or assert should not be the conduct of an atheist. So by that reasoning, I'm not an atheist. And so I just say I'm agnostic.
Just like atheists call out God's name during sex, or or as Hitchens said, when he says God only knows, he just means nobody knows. It's just an expression.
I'm perfectly happy to use a BC and AD.
Yeah, I understand that too. I think I go with the BCE and CE only because I don't want to give Christianity that toehold on the future of our timeline and general discussion of long historical periods, because even though they get credit for it, as you point out, in the calendar calculations and the change from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar and all that, yes. But it'd be like saying, Kepler was a Christian or Newton was a Christian or Anglican, I guess. Therefore, the Anglicans discovered gravity. It's like, no, Newton did. Everybody was religious at the time. They were, it was like 0.0001% atheists, and we don't even know who they are because no one would dare say.
Wait, if you're BCE and BCE, what is it? BCE
and CE.
And C. Thank you. If you're BCE and CE had a different start date than the Christian calendar, then I say, okay, let me consider this other calendar that has innovative start points. But it still uses the start point of the Christian calendar and does a purging of the reference to the fact that the Gregorian calendar is a brilliantly conceived effort of Jesuit priests in the 16th century. I will not deny them that achievement. And so that's why I'm with it. And in Accessory to War, after some tussle with the editors, because publishers tend to be a little, on a liberal,
that's right.
as a tussle, I made my case, And they said, all right, we're going with it. So the whole book, it's AD and BC.
It's a minor point.
Yeah.
I will note a couple points on that. In recent surveys on support for science, there was almost no difference between Democrats and Republicans. It's only on specific issues like climate
Correct.
change, creationism,
Correct.
and then the science gets tweaked because of their political preferences. We need to decouple, say, climate change from politics. Steve Pinker makes the point that Al Gore's film, as powerful as it was, tied climate change to a political left movement, and therefore Republicans feel like, well, we have to be against that because Al Gore was for it.
Right. And plus, since he was the spokesperson as a center point of that fact, but also something that's not widely discussed or brought into you do it all the time, but I don't think you do it often enough. Get back out there. I'll tell you, it's the liberal left likes to claim the scientific high ground over the conservative right when they cite the climate change denial, while simultaneously enclosing within that community, that political, cultural community, the vaccine denial and we go down the list.
Nuclear power.
Yeah, so there's a portfolio of topics that in the liberal left can only be embraced if you reject some or total mainstream science in reference to it.
GMOs.
So be the anti-vaxxers, the anti-GMOs, the crystal healers, the astrologers, the homeopathic folk. All of this is so left shifted, yet it's the left that's saying that the political right is anti-science. So now the difference, of course, is I can consume my homeopathic medicine thinking it's curing me, and it doesn't affect all of civilization.
Right.
They're very different consequences, to the science denial in one side versus the other. So by the way, I may also, I don't know if you have better data on this, but in my sort of non-scientific life encounters with people, I find that conspiracy theorists also tend to be a little more left-leaning than right-leaning.
It depends on which ones. Those are a little more prominent, although the Alex Joneses on the far right, they're so far right that it's hard to know what they are really.
Yeah, it's almost an anomaly, the Alex Jones and all the sponsorships and the like.
Yeah. Along with you, I think I tried to stop calling myself an atheist only because I don't want to define myself by what I don't believe, because it just means lack of belief in God. But like you, I recognize that when people hear the word, they think, oh, communist, socialist, immoralist, doesn't believe in moral values or principles,
Yeah, unless you want to take back the word, that's an effort. And I don't know if you have the energy, or any of us have the energy to take back the word.
Somebody tried this years ago, back in the late 90s, to call us the Brights. It wasn't long before people realized, you mean the people that do believe in God are the dims? It's like, well, and of course, people like Dawkins are like, yeah, they're dim.
Who's the guy up at Tufts who did that? Who was it who first did that?
I forget that. It was a couple.
The philosopher up at Tufts.
Oh no, not Dan Dennett.
I thought Dan Dennett.
He endorsed it. He wrote
he endorsed it. Okay.
He tried to give it a push, but it turns out you can't just invent a word and then by fiat tell everybody start using that word. It either happens or it doesn't, and it didn't. I like humanist or enlightenment humanist or secular humanist, skeptic, whatever. But let's get back to your book. I'm going to read some portions for it because it's beautifully, powerfully written. It opens with this conference you went to in 2003 at Colorado Springs. Just to give viewers a sense of how many government organizations and military organizations there are involved in big science. Colorado Springs
and space in particular in this case.
Yeah, in this particular. Yeah. I mean, I've been there. I had no idea there was all these. Okay, Colorado Springs is a sunny, mid-sized, friendly city that happens to be home to a stunning battery of military entities, including the Peterson Air Force Base, the Schriever Air Force Base, the Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, Fort Carson, the U.S. Air Force Academy, the U.S. Northern Command, the Air Force Space Command, the U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command / Army Forces Strategic Command, the Missile Defense Integration and Operations Center, the Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense, the 21st Space Wing, the 50th Space Wing, the 310th Space Wing, the 302nd Airlift Wing, and the National Security Space Institute. How do you keep track of all these things? And more importantly, just since you have served on some of these committees during George W. Bush's administration, correct? Tell us how the sausages are made. What really goes on in these committee meetings, and how do you get anything done? It just seems so overwhelming.
Something illuminating to me, because I grew up as a New Yorker, so that meant my birthright is as a liberal thinking person. I also came of age in the 1960s, not as a participant, but as an observer of the world. And so I'm watching Vietnam become a very unpopular thing. And I'm watching folk singers sing about war being bad no matter what. And what's that other song? War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. It didn't say the Vietnam War. What is it good for? Absolutely. It just said war, right? So my mindset was war is not good for anything. And for me, the coming of age was looking around and saying, wait a minute, if war is not good for anything, why are there statues of war heroes? Why is all this reference to war? And was anyone chanting this or singing these songs in the Second World War? Maybe some, but nothing like the percentages and numbers and visibility that the anti-Vietnam War movement got. So I had to realize for myself that no, it is not true throughout time that people think war is a bad thing. Just empirically, I had to came to this realization. And so what does it mean for that to be the case? Well, you identify an adversary, an enemy, someone who threatens your security, your life, your property, whatever, and then you amass resources and wage war against that person to squash it. Now, of course, that other person thinks that they're doing the same thing for the same reasons. And then you get everybody fighting, thinking they are in the right. So that's where it gets geopolitically complicated. Mm-hmm. But from the point of view of a culture and a nation, it's usually pretty clear when you think you are being threatened. Whether it's real or imagined or politically motivated, the feeling is real when that happens. And so at that conference that I attended, the Gulf War was in progress, and there was a battle that broke out, or an attack that had taken place, and we had the CNN footage that was being piped in. There were some sessions, by the way, that conference is the National Space Symposium, where all stakeholders in space arrive. So military space, commercial space, government space, scientific space, everybody is there under one roof. And let me tell you how everybody is, because generally you say, I don't have time to go to the conference because I got to do work over here and I got to meet with these people. Anybody who you would meet is at that conference. So I served on the board of the Space Foundation that runs that conference. And so we made sure that there were breakout rooms everywhere at all times so that you can conduct business at that conference that you might have thought you were missing by leaving your home office to attend. So it is a center of space talk. Okay. And everybody's talking. Oh, by the way, space weapon systems are there as well. Everybody, like I said, if you have if you're a stakeholder. All right. So watch what happens. The 2003 Gulf War was the first war we've ever fought. We, the United States, that had fundamental reliance on space assets. The command and control for that conflict flowed out of what was enabled by space assets, primarily the GPS satellites, but also reconnaissance satellites, communication satellites, so that land, sea, air coordination could happen smoothly and cleanly. And while I'm there, there's Lockheed Martin and Grumman and General Dynamics and all these people who make space missiles. They are there, and we see something happen, and a missile gets fired from a plane or a chopper, I forgot which, and it hits its target, they know which missile that is. They know exactly what the application is. And so there I was in this room, and they would go up and cheer. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of...
Yeah.
I was like, it was kind of creepy. But, of course, they are executing policy. We vote for people who serve us in Congress. We vote for president. We vote for all these people. And then policy gets implemented. And then so who am I to say you're creeping me out?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm creeped out by this, I should be creeped out because an electorate voted for the conditions under which this war could be conducted. But then I realized, no, this is how it's always been, ever since there's been civilization. And so I stood there more as an anthropological observer of a tribe than as someone who is sitting there in judgment of it. And that's the part of the experience that I relived for the reader in the opening pages of the book.
Yeah, what you've described is what's called the other guy problem. Even if I want peace, I'm not sure the other guy wants peace, and he's not sure that I really want it. So you end up in these arms races where the missile builders are building for peace in a sense of deterrence.
Right. And what I learned, getting back to your original point about the making of the sausage, on these commissions, I was appointed by George W. Bush in 2001 on a commission to study the future of the aerospace industry of the United States. At the time, there's been severe consolidation of industries. There'd been scores of companies that some had been bought out or went out of business or merged. And at the time, we were down to 5 aerospace companies in the country. Mm-hmm. And the concern was, and there was a growing competition from Airbus and Embraer for our jets. And so the question was, if this continues, what consequence will this have on our commerce? You order something from Amazon, it's on your doorstep the next morning. That involved an airplane, okay? Our security. So the military, these same companies that make our commercial jets make jet fighters, right? And so commerce, the military, as well as transportation. So the question was, is this a good thing, a bad thing? Should we do something about it? So I'm one of 12 members of this commission. There's captains of industry on that commission. There is the head of the Aerospace Machinist Union on that commission. Former Republican member of Congress, former Democrat member of Congress. There's former 4-star generals from the Air Force, former astronauts. And I was like the academic on the panel, on the committee. And so here I was able to see, for the first time in my life, educated, accomplished people across the entire political spectrum come together to try to solve a real problem that the nation faced. And that's when I had the idea for this book, because I said to myself, this must have happened in every country, in every generation, this kind of meeting. There's a perceived problem. We need to solve it. Let's bring in the experts. We're bringing people with strong views of how things could be, should be, or are or aren't. And I knew that my field, the field of astrophysics, has been at the side of military hegemony, conquest, empire building ever since the beginning. Because we're the ones who knew about stars. And you want to navigate around the world, you need an astronomer sitting right next to you. Okay? Because we cared about the sun, moon, and stars. And the stars have a grid system, and the grid projects down onto the Earth. And that helps you figure out where you are on Earth.
So the scientist that wants knowledge for knowledge's sake needs to convince the military guy that these discoveries are going to help his profession, and he needs to convince the politician to fund the military because that's going to help his position.
Well, okay, but in astrophysics, that was not our posture. The posture, it was more sort of incidental. It was incidental that the military needed our star mastery. It's incidental that the astrophysicist needed the fact that the military wanted ways to stabilize the unstable positions of light coming through the atmosphere. They figured out a way to stabilize that, and we've been working on that our whole lives. When that was finally declassified, we said, whoa, we want some of that. And so we took that technology immediately, applied it to our telescopes, and that stabilized our star images, enabling way deeper observations of the universe to be conducted. So no, we're not telling the military, keep fighting wars so that we can get whatever
right.
crumbs come off the plate. That's not what's happening. It's much more passive than that. We're just doing our things. And occasionally we'll go, hey, I can use some of that. Oh, yeah, we can use some of that too. And that is the accessory part. We are complicit with this activity.
How would that apply to someone like Sergei Korolev in Russia, who we didn't know much about him until after he died? But it looks like he had to play these games with Stalin and his cronies to get the funding he needed for space exploration. They really wanted to know how the military was going to benefit.
Right. So if you need big money and you can demonstrate either strong economic return from it or military or security, it's more likely to be funded. That's true. That's true anywhere. And also, of course, true in the United States. And we tell the story of this superconducting supercollider. This would be the baddest ass collider there ever was, conceived right at the dawn of low temperature superconductors. Okay, this was in the 1980s, late 70s, 80s. It was like, oh my gosh, if you have superconducting magnets, then it's cheaper to make a coil where you accelerate charged particles. A moving charged particle will curve in the presence of a magnetic field, and then you could just keep accelerating it and build up the speed and have a badass collider. So this was proposed in the early 80s under Reagan, and this is physicists and their toys. We've been doing that the whole century with all the national labs. Brookhaven and Fermi Labs and Berkeley Labs and all of this. Why? Oh, we'll tell you, because we're probing the atom and it's a frontier of physics. But the flip side of that is, oh my gosh, there's stored energy there. One day we might be able to make a bomb out of it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened with the A-bomb, later with the H-bomb, which makes the A-bomb look like a tiny firecracker relative energies. So there was a reason to have all these physicists around. And let's not fool ourselves into thinking that we had them because we're explorers of science. No, it had security defense possibilities. Okay, so watch what happens. The next generation of these colliders comes out. It's the Supercollider, the Superconducting Supercollider, the SSC. It's so big you can't fit it in Rhode Island because the ring is bigger than the state. So you need a big state. Texas becomes the candidate. Texas gets the contract. They start digging the hole. We're ready. We got the technology. And what happens? 1989, peace breaks out. The wall comes down.
Cold War's over.
1993, the collapse of the Soviet Union is finalized and formalized. 1993, Congress zeroed the budget for the superconducting supercollider. And you look at the report, it was mismanagement and cost overruns. And, okay, what they didn't say is Cold War is over, gentlemen. We don't need physicists anymore. That's what it really could have and should have said, but it didn't. It couches it in this other, and it may have been true. Of course it was true. There's always cost overruns on a project that's on the frontier of science. Of course there is. That's not an indictment against it. That's the affirmation that you're on the frontier. My point is, science doesn't carry passports. Right. Science doesn't care who does it. And the center of mass of particle physics moves to Europe, and the CERN, the European Center for Nuclear Research, they built the Large Hadron Collider, and they discovered the next generations of particles. And the Nobel Prizes are rolling off the assembly line. They already have one for the Higgs boson, the God particle.
Right.
That got discovered in Europe, not here.
Right.
My point is, that's a case where there was an implicit justification for it because we were in a Cold War and we had to stay ahead of the Russians.
Right.
Once that motivation was gone, the motivation to fund the project evaporated. So yes, for big expensive projects, these are conjoined, and we tell that story in the book. But for other projects, you just do your thing.
Right.
As astrophysicists, we know physicists make bombs. We know that.
Right.
We know chemists made napalm. We know if you want to weaponize anthrax, you need the biologist. Their role in warfare, when it is tapped, is well understood.
What do you do with someone like...
Accessory is that we are astrophysicists, one of the most humble of sciences, because we sit there at the end of a telescope waiting for photons to come to us. We don't bake it, freeze it, cut it, heat it. We just wait. And then we have our data. We go to the coffee lounges and we discuss it. And it's just a curious fact that we have overlapping concerns and needs with that of the military.
Although,
we don't make the missile, but we care about targeting. We care about multispectral imaging. We care about detecting dim things that are far away and hard to see, just the way the military does. Now shut up. I've been talking too long.
So what do you do with someone like Werner von Braun, whose accessory to war was not so passive, it appears?
Well, so sure. So there's always these edges where, okay, you want dominance in space, then you hire people with that intent. That'll always happen. And Werner von Braun, we tell the story of him as well, where he, the V2 rocket is thought of as a weapon, okay? But he knew that all you have to do is swap out the payloads, and this is our access to orbit the Earth, because it left Earth's atmosphere. The V2 rocket is basically the first ballistic missile, and it wasn't quite intercontinental yet, ICBM, intercontinental, but it went between like Europe, mainland Europe, and England. And to get there, it goes out of the atmosphere, travels in the vacuum of space suborbitally, and then lands. Werner von Braun knew that this is the beginning of, if you're ever going to put anything into orbit, you're going to need a lot of this technology. So he wasn't sent to Nuremberg at the end of the war. We snatched him from the Nazi crime line and said, come to America. We want to birth a space program. And by the way, this is quite an endorsement for the value of immigrants who have expertise to your country. He births the Apollo program and conceives of the Saturn V rocket and a 3-stage rocket. It's under a German scientist.
Well, as you know, though, he's been hammered in the last few decades because of his complicity in the slave labor that built the V2 rockets. These are Jews who were worked to death to build them. Not that he ordered it, but he certainly knew about it. There, I think we have more of a gray area, much like Carl's final chapter in Demon Haunted World, When Scientists Know Sin. He kind of went after Edmund Teller, for the H-bomb and also for his really pretty strong militaristic approach. Not just that the other guys thinking like we do, so we have to have a game theoretic response. Teller's approach seemed to be much more bellicose and aggressive than that.
Yeah, well, if you have that expertise and you have that mindset, there it is. So does Teller know sin any more than anyone else who actively develops weaponry of ever greater power?
I think Carl thought he did, because he didn't want to just use it as a defensive mechanism, just to have it there as a deterrence, but to use it for mining purposes, for space exploration, for whatever. He just seemed to like to build big bombs. And Carl's concern, at least in that chapter, was that this could lead to more use, indiscriminate use of hydrogen bombs that could trigger ultimately a nuclear winter and so forth.
Gotcha. So that's a whole sort of social cultural dimension there. Is that any different, really, interestingly, from the proliferation of handguns in America?
No.
We have more handguns than there are humans.
Right.
At some point, are you safer when the number of guns is more than the number of people? So yeah, if everyone had their home H-bomb, what's the risk?
Ultimate deterrence. Well, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is we did not have astrophysicists in that realm, because astrophysicists don't build the bombs. That's not what we do. But we have shared interest because our stars have thermonuclear fusion in their cores, converting hydrogen to helium, releasing energy. That is precisely what happens in the center of a hydrogen bomb. So here's what can happen if you want to talk about knowing sin. The closest we get to that is look at Los Alamos. We talk about this in the book. Los Alamos, among the national labs of the United States. They're under the umbrella of the Department of Energy, but many of them have research that directly affects military policy. And at Los Alamos, they track our nuclear arsenal, the nuclear weapons, the nuclear power, nuclear storage, the safe retrieval, stockpiling, and the like. They also care about what happens in a nuclear explosion, and for the longest time had the most powerful computers in the world. So here I am, an astrophysicist, trying to calculate what's going on in the center of a star, and Los Alamos said, hey, we have a computer. We'll double your salary, okay? And we've got a computer that's faster than anything you will ever see in your life. And you can do those same calculations here. I say, I'm there. So then I go in this room, and I run code that calculates the energy yields of an explosion, of what goes on in the thermonuclear fusion in the core of a star. On the other side of the wall, using the same computer and the same code, are physicists calculating the energy yields of hydrogen bombs. And we're using the same code.
Right.
The same, with mild modifications, the same computing bank. So is that sin? I do talk to them when I say I'm the metaphorical I. It's I, the astrophysicist.
Right.
We go to the coffee lounge. Hey, what did you found? Oh, this yield changes if I put in this different cross-section for this element in that nuclear reaction. I'll try that. Then we go back.
Well, since the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, testing weapons has to be done by giant computers. So that's a form of progress. At least we're not detonating them anymore. Precisely,
and that set an entire new cottage industry into motion, and that was the computer simulations of nuclear explosions. And so, and since we astrophysicists can't grab a star and reach in and turn it around and look at it, that was always our regime, where we could only, if we want to understand what's happening deep in a star, we need to do that with the calculations enabled by the computers.
You have a nice discussion of Eisenhower here. That's my president. I was born in 54. Mm-hmm. So pre-Sputnik, Eisenhower dismissed huge expenditures on weapons as just negative stuff, adding nothing to the earning capability of the country. He maintained that he wanted to get the federal government out of any unnecessary activity and to stop the hysterical approach to curtailing every ill through infusions of cash. In the spring of 1953, 3 short months into his first term, he told the American Society of Newspaper Editors, quote, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are not clothed. We pay for a single fighter plane with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the cloud of threatening war, it is humanity hanging from a cross of iron." Mm. That's a powerful statement you have.
Very powerful. And this is the early seeds of his exit speech from his presidency, where he coins the term military-industrial complex.
Yeah, it had really become that by the time of the end of his presidency.
Well, in the last chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, most of us that are not in government think, well, if they cut the $100 billion out of the Department of Defense budget, we could buy a computer for every child in America. But that's not how it works, right? I mean, it's like you cut the budget over here. It doesn't just go somewhere else.
It completely is not how it works. But I will not fault the sentiment of those words, because if you, in any world of limited cash resources, and I think it's okay to think of it as you spend it here, but you could have spent it here, even if that's not how it would literally happen.
Right.
And in the same way, after we landed on the moon, is if we can land on the moon, but we can't feed the thing. It became just a reference point for how to think about the problem. In the final chapter, the book opens with a chapter called "A Time to Kill," but ends with "A Time to Heal." And the point there is, it's up to a country to decide how insecure they feel, which then leads to how much money you would spend on a war machine to defend yourself or to enhance your security. And my point is, science has a way of being highly efficient in solutions to problems that were previously costly or labor intensive. And a slightly contrived but simple to see example here is, you and I are old enough to remember the Tylenol scare, when there were poisons put in the Tylenol bottles. Some people actually died. So you can say, well, how do you solve this? You could park a soldier at the end of every aisle of every medicine aisle of every store, and with armed and watching to see if anyone is going to put poison in the medicine bottles. That would work, okay? Or you could be clever and simple and say, why don't I package the Tylenol so that to a buyer, if the package has been tampered, I will know immediately. Then I can choose to not buy it. That's where you get clever, innovative solutions to problems of your security that are not always best solved by bringing arms to the table, such as the guard posted at every aisle of every supermarket. So it's just want to keep it open, the fact that security in the future may be measured not by how many missiles are in your silo, but how many scientists and engineers are in your lab.
So you have this quote here, the pro-armaments motto, peace through strength, not taking any cards off the table, and so on. So you end up with these arms races. We were up to about, I think it was 70,000 nuclear weapons in late 80s, early 90s. Now it's down to less than 10,000, maybe 7,500. Still enough probably for a minor nuclear winter, whatever that would mean. But reducing it down, see, in Carl's book, I forget the title. It was that long title. It was on his book on nuclear weapons that he wrote with the other guys, with the nuclear winter paper, that you have to have below 1,000 to prevent a nuclear winter. The problem seems to be trust. And, again, the other guy problem. How do we convince them that we have enough nukes to end you if you attack us first? So we have no first use policy is never going to be passed, because you have to be willing to do that just in case. Right. And yet keep it below 1,000, because it starts to escalate when you have someone like Putin who wants to make Russia great again. And we have somebody that wants to make America great again. You know, you get this kind of rhetorical arms race, and then pretty soon you're building more weapons. Right. How do you stop that? That seems to be a psychological or game theoretic problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think is it a country that wants to feel that way, or a leader that extracts that primal emotion from within you that could otherwise be suppressed or just sort of excised?
The latter, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of, how jingoistic do you feel today? I think it really comes down to that. And this has been an argument for, I don't know that this would solve the problem, but it certainly is worth the experiment. I'd be curious if women would behave the same way as these testosterone-driven men who are making decisions that hold the world hostage to their
Probably not, although the counterexample is Margaret Thatcher, although she's operating in a man's world, that you have to act like that.
And Indira Gandhi, it was another one where she was not a peacenik,
right.
as I had read. So yeah, I'm just saying the experiment is still not fully conducted.
There's a famous story. George Shultz was talking to Margaret Thatcher, and she was talking about nukes and the importance of nukes as deterrence, and she said, Margaret, President Reagan, he doesn't want nukes, and she hit him with her handbag. Don't say that in public. So that he called.
So Margaret became one of the guys, is what they.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she became one of the guys, right? Because that's the environment. So I mean, it comes back to human psychology in terms of deterrence, and I mean, your whole book is about this sort of integration of all that, of economics, politics, military, science, and it's all driven by human psychology. Just looking through a few of these other quotable sections from the book. Let's see. I mean, the problem now. I had a note here, Dr. Strangelove, with this quote from Putin. We talked about missiles that are capable of bypassing, avoiding defensive barriers. We made no secret of our plans. We spoke openly of what we were about to do. We wanted to motivate our counterparts. This was in 2004. Russia is a major nuclear power, but nobody wanted to talk to us seriously. They kept ignoring us. Nobody listened to us. So listen to us now. Oh. I mean, it reminds me of the Dr. Strangelove quote where he says, he's talking about the doomsday machine. He says, if you keep it a secret, there's no point in having the doomsday machine. You've got to tell everybody about it so it's never used. I've been convinced, I've been thinking about this with regard to the Holocaust. In Holocaust studies, there's a little quip, no Hitler, no Holocaust. And I think that's probably true. But I think this would apply to nuclear weapons as well. No Hitler, no nuclear weapons. We wouldn't have had the Second World War. Most of Hitler's generals did not want to get into a fight that big. Most of the populace supported the Nazi regime in the 30s, but not in the 40s. And therefore, it's not like it's inevitable that the genie would come out of the toothpaste tube and you can't put it back in with nuclear weapons. It is just a scientific discovery that didn't have to be made and developed into weapons. There's lots of weapons that are never developed. But we're past that now. I mean, here they're there. So I don't know how to get back from that.
Another interesting point is our collective susceptibility to highly charismatic people. This is what gets you all your cults, especially the ones where they commit suicide. Someone is so charismatic that they've convinced me that I should take my own life in the interest of this idea or philosophy that they're putting on the table. So the power and charisma of Hitler is, I think, that's a psychological problem with being human and responding to people with that level of influence on our conduct and our emotion, and especially on our tribalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, here's another good passage from, I loved your last chapter, Time to Heal. Big picture, scientists urge to collaborate transcends religion, culture, and politics, because in space there is no religion, culture, or politics. Only the receding boundary of our ignorance and the advancing frontier of our cosmic discovery. That's a very Cosmos-like line. I really love that.
I like that.
But it's true. I mean, I guess those of us
with a deeper voice when you say it.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of my, I guess, science fiction-y, futurist, non-nationalist, internationalist, delusional utopian self that we can really overcome these kinds of natural tribalisms, but they're so deep. Reading Amy Chu's book on political tribes, she points out the mistake we made in Vietnam and also in Iraq was underestimating the power of these smaller tribes within the country. And we were fighting these, in our minds, this big ideological battle between capitalism and communism. When they weren't fighting that at all. They were busy with these other little tribal issues, and that's still playing out in Iraq now. It's a hard problem to overcome.
Right. And so the going forward, because you're trying to sort of see how will this all remedy. I don't know, and in my advancing age, I'm more and more skeptical that peace can be established. And I respect the conclusions of Pinker's Better Angels of Our Nature. And a lot of the data is hard to argue with, and that's a good thing. But still, we are susceptible. We like charisma. We want to be told what to do. It's easier than thinking about what to do for ourselves. And so it seems to me there will always be the risk of someone rising up, such as Hitler, that could destabilize the world in the way that he did.
At the end of the moral arc, I talk about the eventual demise of nation states or falling into disuse, and maybe we'd see the rise of city-states again, which would be good for sort of disempowering any one person from having too much power. On the other hand, maybe end up with 100 little Hitlers rather than one big one.
Careful what you wish for, yeah.
And maybe that problem would not go away if we colonized other planets. If you think of the future, maybe in 1,000 years or 100,000 years, putting your imaginary cap on. So we're a multiplanetary species. We'd probably even be more than one species, because there'd be a reproductive barrier between the stars, say, and there'd be no interbreeding. So we would diverge biologically.
Speciate.
We'd speciate. Mm-hmm. And still, the tribalism is so deep inside of us. We may end up like in Star Trek. Every episode, there's some conflict somewhere on another planet.
Except that's the foundations of drama. But other than that...
yeah, that's right. You got to have that, or else it's a boring show. Yeah.
Yeah, and in there we also quote Huygens, where you might have easier access to it than I would, because I'd have to dig it out.
Oh, yeah.
But Christian Huygens, who's a brilliant polymath, a Dutch polymath, who first conceived of the pendulum clock, and wrote also for the public. So I have a soft spot for an extra soft spot for him professionally. There's a...
Yeah, I have that here.
Can you have it? Yeah, can you read it?
Yeah. But let's see. Yes, waging war requires clever thinking and promotes technical innovation, not controversial. But Huygens can't resist the linking the absence of armed conflict with intellectual stagnation. And if men were to lead their whole lives in an undisturbed continual peace, in no fear of poverty, no danger of war, I don't doubt that they would live little better than brutes, without all knowledge or enjoyment of those advantages that make our lives pass on with pleasure and profit. We should want the wonderful art of writing, of its great use and necessity in commerce, and war had not forced out the invention. 'Tis to these we owe our art of sailing, our art of sewing, and most of the discoveries of which we are masters, and almost all the secrets in experimental knowledge. And you write, so simple. No war equals no intellectual ferment. Arm in arm with trade, says Huygens. War has served the catalyst for literacy, exploration, agriculture, and science.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of an exaggeration, but the spirit of it rings very deeply true. I want to assert, not to pick a fight or to choose sides, but my professional community does not build bombs. We just don't do that. It's not what we don't know how to weaponize anything yet, perhaps. We just have shared technological values with what's going on in the military, and that's all I was trying to point out. And by the way, did I get to say this yet or not? But at the beginning of this book, when I started to conceive of the book, I extrapolated how long it would take to write it. Did I tell you this yet? And I came up with about 1,000 years, and I said, okay, I need a co-author.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it got done.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of your fans will want to know, how do you do all these different things? You write this massive scholarly tome, you run the museum, you're doing Cosmos, Star Talk, multitasking.
I probably watch less football than they do. Okay, that gets you a whole chunk of time right there.
Right.
Plus, there's a lot of interstitial time in a day that sums to quite a bit if you're not, if you know how to see where it is and then extract it. So I have various tasks and I think any productive person would echo this. The various tasks, there's like email in one extreme, and then deep thought to write something deeply creative in another extreme, and many different tasks that fill the middle of that. Time intervals in my day and how awake I am and where I happen to be, those time intervals don't fit everything that I have to do. It doesn't work. So what I do is I take these bits of things I need to do and assign them to these bits and pieces of the day where they can be best served. So email is my lowest level of intellectual engagement. I'll do that while I'm waiting for the bus, okay? Or while I'm on the train and I'm getting off the train in 2 stops. I get in 3 emails there. I'm not going to sit at my desk when I have a 3-hour stretch. Well, let me get 3 hours of email done. No. It reminds me of the saying, if you want to be more creative, become less productive.
Right. You also have good associates to work with. Brandon Braga, I know him. He's very creative, very hardworking, very organized.
Right. And so he's a co-writer and director of many of the episodes of Cosmos. Oh, so in this particular book, Avis Lang was my longtime editor of my essays from Natural History magazine. So we knew how to work together. We knew how to contest a phrase and who would win and who wouldn't, why and how. So that's an important backdrop for the collaboration that then became this book. Then I had to have the argument with the publisher because the publisher wants my name bigger than hers. And I said, no, that we are co-authors on this, but you're more famous. I said, no, we are co-authors. And the name will be the same size. And my other book was doing very well at the time and still is doing quite well, the Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. So when you have a book that does well, it gives you even more leverage on your publisher to do what you want them to do. So I was very delighted for that to be the case and for the names to be smaller than the title. In a book of this substance, the title is everything. It's got nothing to do with the names. And often the publisher makes your name bigger than the title because they want people to buy, to know your work, to see you first, and they'll buy whatever it is you do. And I'm saying that's not what I'm about in this book. So.
And you're still doing Star Talk? Do you have another series on Nat Geo coming?
Yes, still doing Star Talk. Thanks for asking. In fact, I don't know when this edit will air. This
well, we'll do it on the pub date. I think your book comes out next 2 weeks or something like that.
Next week it happens. So I can say, so at the time of this recording, I'm preparing to go to Los Angeles for the Emmy Awards because Star Talk has been nominated for its 4th consecutive Emmy for outstanding informational programming. So it sounds cliche, but I really mean it when I say the fact that it got noticed at all as a bit of science programming, to me, gives me hope that science literacy is somewhere in the future of civilization and of our society. So, and I'm delighted and honored to be a part of that landscape that's serving the public's curiosity.
Well, and congratulations. I mean, it's hard to do what you do. People think, well, people like watch American Idol. Well, anybody can get up there and sing. No, actually, most people can't. And I hear people say, oh, anybody could write for the public or do TV. No, actually, it's really hard. You should try it.
Thanks for recognizing that, of course. Because anyone who's literate can write, but are you just putting information on the page or are you actually communicating? These are two different arts. If you're just putting information on the page, then go write a wiki page, right? And that's a very efficiently delivered information. But that is not, a writer would not call that communicating. Communicating is an art of communicating an idea with emotion and with compelling feeling for what it is you're saying, and so that the person is right there with you at every turn of phrase and every turn of sentence. So, by the way, with my tweets, for example, I've gotten the highest of compliment insults, which is, I really like your tweets. Do you actually write them?
You have a little tweet machine, right, that cranks those out. You call in the tweet director. Hey, get in here and write me a nice tweet. Yeah,
you like them so much, you don't think I wrote them, okay? So do I say thank you or do I, punch you in the face? So
when you think about Neil deGrasse Tyson in the next 3 decades, what's the long-term goal? I mean, like, I want 3 more books on these topics or another.
There are literally and precisely 3 more books I intend to write. I think 2 of those 3 will be greater than anything I've written before. So, and I'm still keeping it close to my chest. And those are going to be my my magnum opus books. But I have a possibly delusional ambition that
they're all delusional. That's what makes them great.
Other people rise up into this communication, this science literacy educator communicator zone that I can just step backwards slowly in ways that no one notices and then exit the back door. There's everyone else on this landscape, the people who make YouTube videos and write books and give talks and so that the landscape, I think, first cleared really by Carl Sagan, and we're all sort of on this, you and I are both on this landscape of trying to get people to think rationally, that there's a point where I'm no longer noticed for my absence. Then I go back to the lab and become a scientist again.
Well, I think we're getting there. I do. I think.
There's a nice rise.
I think CP Snow's two cultures. I think the bridge is there. It's still under construction, but you know, the whole idea of like having Stephen Hawking's book on your coffee table. At least it's on the coffee table.
Right,
That's a
right,
good start.
right. Exactly. And another element of that is Cosmos in 2014, and again will likely air on a Sunday night. And Sunday night, everybody's home. Right. And that's when Game of Thrones airs. But because it's in prime time on a Sunday night, it means entertainment reporters who have the prime time beat for the weekend have to talk about Cosmos in the same article as Game of Thrones.
So will this air on Fox in general and then Nat Geo subsequently?
Yeah, so it would premiere on Fox the next day. The typical scenario premieres on Fox on a Sunday, then goes to Nat Geo on the Monday, and then goes around the world to the National Geographic Network, which is 180 countries and 50 languages. And so that's the real global distribution of Cosmos through that means. Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's give the final word to your final paragraph that begins, the almost final word.
Okay.
Goes to the anonymous carrier of a placard at one of the 600-plus marches for science that took place around the world on April 22nd, 2017. Think while it's still legal, urged the placard. And while you're thinking, try to imagine that each of us is a transient assemblage of atoms and molecules, that our planet is one small pebble ambling in orbit through the vacuum of space, that astrophysics, a historical handmaiden of human conflict, now offers a way to redirect our species' urges to kill into collaborative urges to explore, to uncover alien civilizations, to link Earth with the rest of the cosmos, genetically, chemically, atomically, and protect our home planet until the sun's furnace burns itself out 5 billion years hence. Try to imagine such things, not because they are imaginary, but because they are true. Wow. Neil, that's a great book, great writing, great way to end it. Congratulations. Accessory to War.
As an author yourself, I value the compliment. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's great. It's I don't know how you're going to top that, but looking forward to whatever you're holding close to your chest. You're not going to give us a hint of what that is.
No. The time will come.
And you're not going to run for governor of New York or mayor of New York City?
Nope. I don't want to lead anybody. Nope.
Spoken like a true non-cult leader. All right, Neil, we've been going almost an hour and a half. I know you're busy and got to get off to one of your 27 other projects.
And Michael, always good to see you and chat with you.
Likewise. And next time I'm in New York, I'll check in.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Neil.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.